Yes, mathematics is all about numbers. But where did these numbers actually came from? Who got these numbers? Who introduced these numbers? What is the history of these numbers? Let us see. Well, even the Stone Age people had some concept of number, though their number system was way limited than our number system. So let me take you back to Stone Age now, and let's go through this journey of numbers. But remember one thing, that in this time period, people know nothing about numbers. So it was fairly easy back then. They did not have any need to know exact numbers, nor did it matter exactly how many animals were there or how far. All that mattered was that there were some animals near or far. They would hunt those animals and go that distance without any need of knowing exact numbers. Later they realized that they could not communicate or tell the other person exactly how many animals were there. And so they realized that they would need numbers. It is said that they probably started counting by fingers. But since they had just 10 fingers, they could not count beyond the number 10 using fingers. So for larger numbers, they started using tally marks. However, that too wasn't sufficient for large numbers. So they started using stones or pebbles to represent numbers. This too was always not possible. Early man was still far away from numbers, but at least now they could understand by looking at a pile of stones that larger the pile, more the number of animals. Centuries later, we moved on to a civilization where people not just hunted animals, but they started domesticating animals. From caves, they moved to huts. Barter system was started. People started interacting and exchanging things. Now, for the exchange of things, they had realized the need of exact numbers. So they invented these 30 numbers. These are the first 30 numbers that they used. One was called Tim, Sim, Pim, Plop, Bam, Ram, Slop, Clop, Fam, Amba, Samba, Jolo, Polo, Molo, and so on. So they kept on numbering and naming these different symbols. They gave each symbol a name. They called number 29 as Maya and 30 was called as Zaka. Now 30 meant a whole lot of numbers. So Zaka was a whole lot of numbers. There were a lot of problems with this number system. Though they had come up with 30 symbols and names, but it was extremely difficult to memorize them. Not just this, mathematics was becoming really difficult. For instance, if you had Bam cows and someone took away Tim cows from you, then you would be left with Plop cows. Now, it would take so many years for anyone to memorize all the different combinations of these 30 symbols. Centuries later, Egyptians came. Egyptians had varied interests. They were extremely fascinated with numbers. They constructed tall pyramids and were also interested in astronomy. For all this, they had invented large numbers. Let us take a look at the Egyptian number system now. They used objects from everyday life as symbols. A rod stood for 1. they used 2 rods to show 2, similarly 3 to show the number 3, and so on till 9. They realized that using 10 rods for 10 was getting too long, so instead they used a horseshoe to represent 10. So a horseshoe represented 10. They would use 2 such horseshoe to represent 20, and so on. So 9 horseshoe would represent the number 90. Again, they realized that using 10 horseshoe to represent the number 100 would be too long. So instead, for 100, they used the symbol of a coiled rope. Egyptians made a symbol for every power of 10. They used a lotus for 1000. For 10,000, they used a pointing finger. For a lakh, they used a tadpole. And an astonished man was used to represent 10 lakhs. Egyptian number system was much better and efficient than previous number systems. However, there were problems with this number system too. They did not have a word and symbol for every possible quantity. Then they came up with the idea of combining symbols. Symbol for each was repeated as many times as possible. So if they want to write the number 9,999, they used 9 thousands, that is 9 lotus to represent 9,000, 9 coiled ropes to represent 9 hundreds, 9 horseshoe to represent 9 tens, and 9 rods to represent 9 ones. Now you can see that the problem here was that these numbers took a whole lot of space and time. So from Stone Age, we moved to the primitive civilization, and then the Egyptians. All these gave way to our modern number system that uses only 10 digits. It is assumed that they too must have counted on their fingers because only 10 different symbols were used, which they called as fingers or digits. It took a lot of toil and effort to arrive at these numbers, which almost everyone is familiar with these days. These modern number system came from medieval. Medieval came from Arabic. Arabic in turn came from Hindu, and the Hindu came from Brahmi. You would realize that Brahmi had only 9 numbers. 0 was not introduced then. 0 came in much later when the Hindu script was written. So these are the 10 numbers which everyone is familiar with, which is our modern number system. So we've seen that this is a modern number system that uses 10 numbers or 10 digits. Well, using these 10 symbols, we can write any number in our modern number system. But now, since you know how we actually got these numbers, how much hard work has got into getting these 10 symbols, I hope you can appreciate the amount of hard work that has gone into these numbers. So don't take these numbers for granted. So these are the 10 numbers, and now we have seen that our modern number system has evolved from a lot of civilizations. But in a way, we can say that it is not much different from what the Egyptian number system was. Let us see. Let's take this simple addition problem in our number system, which is 342 plus 420 plus 205, which gives me 967. Now, if I look at this same problem in Egyptian number system, it would look like this, which seems pretty complicated. But yet again, let me remind you, it is not much different from our number system. How? Let's see. If I look at the Egyptian number system as groups of symbols, if I group the symbols together and compare these groups of symbols with the digits of our modern number system, then you would find some similarity. 3 hundreds, 3 hundreds, 4 tens, 4 tens, 2 ones, 2 ones, and so on. You will find some similarity. Now further, if I place these groups also into columns of ones, tens, and hundreds, If I place it in columns of ones, tens and hundreds, then you would see much more similarity. What is clear between these two number systems is that the Egyptian number system has no symbol for the number 0. There is no symbol here or here for the number 0. Another difference is, which is more important, that in our number system, the same number 2 is being used for 1, is being used for 20, ones place, in tens place, and in hundreds place. So the same number 2 here represents 2 ones. The number here is representing 2 tens. Whereas here, this number 2, the same symbol is representing 200. Whereas if you look at the Egyptian number system, they have different symbol for 2, a different symbol for 20, and again, different symbol for 200. So, importantly, what we see that in Egyptian number system, they need not place the numbers into groups or columns, because there was no need of that. They had different symbols for different digits, and hence there was no need of placing it into different columns, and so 0 was not needed. But if we look at our modern number system follows positional notation. What does positional notation mean? That same digit is used and same digit represents different quantities when placed in different positions. So this number 2 is representing 2 ones also, number 2 is representing 20 also, and 200 also. And this is why the need of 0 was felt, and 0 was used to represent a column that did not contain any digits. Because what would you call this 2 as? Is this 2 ones? Is this 2 tens? Or is it 200? So this same digit, when I put a 0 in front of it, it becomes 20. When I put 2 zeros, it becomes 200, and so on. So importance of 0 was felt, and that's why 0 was included later. We'd seen how 0 was included much later. Why was 0 included much later? Because there was a need for 0 that was felt as a symbol for columns that had no digits. So that's how our modern number system follows the positional notation. So we've seen the 10 digits which we use in our modern number system. Now there's an interesting side to it which says that how did numbers actually came about? Why was this symbol used for 1 and not any other symbol? An interesting study says that number 1 actually came from the number of angles. So you can find only one angle in this number 1, and so this number 1 came. Similarly for 2 we have this symbol because it makes 2 angles. 3 because of 3 angles. Similarly 4 for the 4 angles. 5 makes 5 angles. Again 6 would make 6. Seven angles in case of 7. For 8 I have 8 angles. And for 9 I should get 9 angles. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 and 9. So I get 9 angles in case of 9. That's why 9 has this shape and this symbol only, and similarly 2 has this shape and this symbol. Now since 0 came in much later, you can well understand why 0 was shaped like this. Because if I have 0 which looks like this, then that means there are no angles. So 0 shows no angles. And 0 was called Shunya. So this is our modern number system which uses 10 symbols, and we can use these 10 symbols to represent any number.